TFL EV is brought to you by Flow Charger, maker of reliable, high-quality charging stations for your electric vehicle.
Hey everybody, so I've got a very special vehicle here, the new fully electric Lexus RZ450e, and in this video we're going to take her for a spin, let you know how it drives, and talk about all the important gadgets and gizmos you need to know. So what is the RZ450e? Well, it's a fully electric Lexus SUV based on the Toyota TNGA architecture, which means that it shares a lot of components with the Toyota BZ4X. However, Lexus has gone a few extra steps to make this vehicle more premium. So for example, it has 310-ish horsepower versus 214 in the BZ4X. So it's 100 more horsepower. When you plant the accelerator, well, it accelerates with a lot of confidence. It has a 71.4 kilowatt hour battery brought to you by Panasonic, and that gives it an EPA rated range of between 196 miles on the 20-inch wheels all the way up to 220 on the 18-inch wheels, and it carries a heftier price tag. This one is equipped right around $63,000. It starts in the very high 50s and goes through the mid 60s. All right, so that's kind of the elevator pitch out of the way, but let's talk about some of the more finely tuned details of the RZ450, and we'll start on the outside. This is the first Lexus ever to feature an illuminated badge, which comes on when the lights are on or when the car is charging. It's a $200 extra. These little pointy guys right here are called vortex generators. It's supposed to help with the aerodynamics, but it kind of makes it look like the middle part of the spoiler is missing. Even though the RZ is an SUV, it has no rear wiper, and that's because Lexus says the rear window slopes down so much it makes it look like a coupe, and a coupe doesn't need a rear wiper. I'm not so sure I agree. The door handles on the RZ don't move. Instead, there's a little button behind the handle, push in, and that's how you open up the door. It's fully electric. The RZ450e features a new unlock and lock ding. Take a listen. Now, the big differentiator between the Lexus and its Toyota counterpart, in my opinion, is the interior. It just feels a lot nicer in here. So you have a couple of different seat options. There's this version, which is a synthetic leather, basically. It's an animal-free leather, or you can get a suede. Now, it feels quite nice, actually, this synthetic leather. Every material feels super soft to the touch, and it also feels like it's going to last a really long time. It's not quite a neoprene. It certainly doesn't feel like a traditional vinyl. They did a really good job dialing this in. Or if you get, a little bit more fancy, you can also do this like suede material, which is pretty cool. Now, the RZ450e comes in two models, the premium and the luxury. This one is a premium, although it does have the optional 20-inch wheels and a couple of options such as those heating pads. Oh, I didn't talk about the heating pads. Here, let me talk about the heating pads and a couple other interior bits. Lexus put a ton of work into the shifter design, so you don't have to move your whole wrist to change vehicle direction. Instead, you push down on this collar and then you flick your fingers. Park, reverse, neutral drive, all done via fingertip. Offers a bunch of charging options, including changing the AC charging current, which is great. You can also change the charging limit, which is even better. And this is an unusual one. You can even change the DC charge power from max all the way down to 50 kilowatts, which is pretty cool. And then this is very unusual. You can also turn on and off battery cooling while the vehicle is plugged in to keep the performance and battery warming. I would recommend leaving those puppies on. In fact, look at that. It's like, no, you are going to keep me on. The center screen here shows you important information regarding active safety systems, of course, your speed, whether or not you're charging or taking power from the battery. And then here, of course, is your little state of charge meter. However, it's got these little ticks indicating 5%, but I don't believe there's a way to show state of charge in a percentage, which would be awesome. The RZ450e features a panoramic sunroof with these two glass panels here. Now, there is an option so you can dim it at the push of a button. This car doesn't have it, but don't fear, because even if you don't have that panel, they still have a protective coating on here to prevent UV rays from heating up the cabin. Oh, and by the way, there's no shade because Lexus says that reduces the weight by about 12.8 pounds. You get the RZ450e with radiant heat pads for both the driver and the passenger, located right here above your knees so that you can heat up your body without heating up the whole cabin. It's supposed to help with efficiency. However, if you do that, you also lose the glove box. But do not fret, because Lexus says there's room that a glove box would have had here underneath the console. All right, so now that you know about some of the interior features there, we'll keep going with some of the other nice things on the inside. Every RZ450e comes with a 14-inch touchscreen display. It's easy to use. I didn't love this system at first when it first debuted, but it really feels like they've ironed out some of the kinks. It's fast, it's pretty responsive, it's got wireless Apple CarPlay, it's got wireless Android Auto, so it's got really good connectivity in the system. I really like that. Almost everything in this car is controlled via some kind of touch-sensitive or touchscreen panel. So you do have hard buttons for the volume. It's got a knob. That's a win. Also hard buttons for front defrost, rear defrost, which is great. But the heated seat controls, the rest of the climate system, the radio, obviously the navigation, all done via the screen. And even here in the steering wheel, we have these little touch panels which display in the heads-up display, and you can kind of control all of the car settings via this touch panel. So if you like screens and digital functionality, this car is right for you. If you're maybe an older buyer or you're someone who loves a lot of buttons, the RZ450e is probably not going to be a very good choice from that standpoint. And the best part about, in my opinion, any Lexus right now is the Lexus Safety System, LSS 3.0, right? Which gives you the full suite standard of all the goodies, from forward collision warning to forward collision mitigation, blind spot monitoring. You got lane centering, you got adaptive cruise control, all standard across the lineup, across every RZ, and it really is a good system. It works very well, and it's pretty easy to understand as well. Man, San Diego's beautiful, but there are a ton of stoplights over here by PCH. Really a lot of them. Now, the visibility in this car is okay. It's not fantastic. I've noticed that the belt line is pretty tall. So they have a pretty high belt line and a very low nose. This car looks pretty small in pictures, but the wheelbase and the overall length is the same as the Lexus RX, which is a fairly large SUV. You look at it and you're like, that looks like a baby Lexus. That's going to be NX sized or even smaller. Absolutely not. This is a full-length RX vehicle, but it's very low as well, so you sit pretty low to the ground. If you want that kind of command driving position where you'd expect from a more traditional SUV, this is probably not a great choice for you, but it also has a very low nose, so the forward visibility is very, very good. And I also like my my head to windshield ratio. I don't feel like I'm shoved up too close against the header bar here or the windshield, so that's pretty good. It's just the sideward visibility where I feel a little short. Of course, you can raise the electrically operated seats, but I still feel just a little bit short in here. Now, from a driving standpoint, the RZ450e brings a lot to the table. This car is a lot nicer to drive than the BZ4X, with which it shares its platform. So I really think the handling and the suspension tuning on this car are much softer and much more compliant. So for everyday driving, this car definitely feels like a Lexus, where it's not to say the BZ4X is bad, but it doesn't quite have that same plush driving experience that the RZ450e does. Now, from an acceleration standpoint, it's got a lot of it. It uses a dual motor setup. Now, the motor in the front is rated at 150 kilowatts. The motor in the rear is rated at 80 kilowatts, and it can distribute torque front and back depending on how it sees fit based on the scenario. However, there are a few different drive modes, including normal, sport, eco, and range. And if you select range mode, it puts a lot more emphasis on that rear motor. It, of course, disables the climate control and optimizes the vehicle for long distance cruising. But like I said, in range mode, it makes this a rear motor bias setup, and you definitely feel it. So it's a lot slower to kind of take off when you apply accelerator inputs. And this car is actually really fun to drive. I mean, 300 horsepower doesn't sound like a ton by modern day standards, but with that instant torque, it gives you a nice little kickback in your seat. Now, compared to like a Model Y, even the standard version, not quite that exciting, but still a fun car to drive. Now, this Lexus has several different regen settings or regenerative braking settings, and you control them via the paddle shifters. So if I pull the left paddle, the minus paddle all the way several times, when you let off the accelerator, it does slow you down and add some electricity back into that battery pack. It's not as strong as I would probably like. You can definitely tell that this system is tailored for a new EV driver who's perhaps not used to a strong regen system, and it won't bring you to a complete stop, but at least we do have some adjustability. have a discussion on range and charging, two very important things with a fully electric vehicle. Now, there's only one battery and one drive configuration, the direct 4 all-wheel drive system on the RZ450e. You can't get it in two-wheel drive like the Toyota version, and you can't get a smaller battery or a larger battery. You just get the 71.4 kilowatt-hour unit. Range, 220 on the 18-inch wheels, 196 on the 20-inch wheels. Not fantastic. You know, a lot of this vehicle's competitors, be it from Genesis, be it from, well, even like the Audi Q4 e-tron, right? And especially the Tesla Model Y offer a lot more range. The Tesla's over 300 miles EPA rated. This car is 200. Now, we have to run it through the full range testing. Maybe it's underrated. Maybe they're being a little conservative, but that is just not a very large number on paper. Now, Lexus predicts that this car is going to be a second or a third car for most owners. So they're not intending this to be like the primary road trip vehicle. And you know that because they're offering a program where you get up to 30 days of loaner vehicle availability from your Lexus dealer on a gasoline or a hybrid vehicle for 3 years. So you have 30 days over 3 years to go to your dealer and be like, hey, I want to go take a road trip. Do you have a Lexus I can borrow that has a gasoline engine? And they're like, yeah, here you go. And then you can road trip in that so that you can leave your RZ450e at home. So it's clear that this is not intended to be, let's go drive across country and, you know, do full lucid road tripping ability. It's not designed to be that. Instead, it's designed to be, you know, the average commute in the U.S., 40 miles or so, plenty of range for that, maybe go visit the in-laws on the weekend, that kind of thing. It does have standard DC fast charging, CCS1, they say up to 150 kilowatt peak, and that should be good for 0 to 80% in 30 minutes, according to Lexus. The AC charger, 6.6 kilowatts, they say 0 to 100% charge in about 9.5 hours. Both of those numbers, not amazing on paper. They're probably going to be good enough for most people. This is a vehicle I definitely recommend installing a level 2 at your house and charging it up that way. It does come included with a level 1 charge connector, but it's pretty weenie. We're going to be completely transparent about that. So, you know, definitely want to go out and buy a level 2 connector or charger for your garage. Now, it's interesting, in the presentation of this vehicle, they said they were targeting the Jaguar I-Pace, the big e-tron, the Volvo XC40 Recharge, Tesla Model Y in the development and kind of the research of this vehicle. Since then, a lot more vehicles have come onto the market. You've got the electrified Genesis, the GV60, the GV70, you like the eGMP vehicles from Hyundai Kia, right? You have the small e-tron, the Q4 e-tron, which offers a lot more affordability. This car is a little bit of a tricky sell from the value to the range standpoint, and especially when you consider that it's built in Japan, so it doesn't qualify for the full $7,500 tax. It doesn't qualify for any tax credit federal here in the U.S. as far as I know. Maybe the rules will change a little bit. Maybe they'll get it to qualify, but that, especially compared to the Tesla, which starts $55,000, does qualify for $7,500. It's kind of a hard sell. You know what I mean, from a value standpoint. Now, I have no doubt the interior on this car is better assembled and feels a lot nicer than the Tesla. All the panels, all the fit and finish just feels excellent in here. But, you know, if you want a long-range EV for less money, there are certainly more options out there, even if you compare it to like the Volvo or the Audi, which are by no means the longest range EVs on the market. The range numbers on this car are just a little bit disappointing. I'd love to see that improved. Now, it's a nice car to drive. It's very smooth. I think it's a very well-rounded package, but definitely it's going to have some challenges in the marketplace, I think. What I do love about it, though, is that you've got the confidence and the backing of, you know, the longest produced high-voltage EV manufacturer really in the world. Toyota's been working on hybrids and electrification since the 90s. You know, and Lexus, I think, debuted their first RX hybrid in 2004 or something. So there's a lot of history with this car and a lot of history with this brand in terms of the roots of electrification. So that does fill me with a lot of confidence, and it's so nice to drive. It is a lot better than its numbers on paper would suggest. I think it's definitely worth a test drive. You should definitely check it out. The Lexus RZ450e is definitely more than its numbers on paper would suggest. It's a really great place to drive. It's actually pretty fun and it offers a lot of quality. However, that range number really is pretty disappointing, and they're only building about 5,000 this year. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. As always, been Tommy, behind the camera Ian. We'll see you on the next episode.